Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Rumble. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at HTEC. And as with many other industries in private equity, AI is firmly on the board agenda. The conversation tends to stall at opportunity and discovery and prioritization. So it's not that private equity have a shortage of ideas, it's more of a production problem. So most firms can identify attractive initiatives, but fewer can get them into production fast enough to actually matter economically within the whole period. So there is a tougher question behind all of this, which is where does AI actually make it into production, and what is that measurable value? Now, to have that conversation today, I'm joined by Ronny Fehling. Ronny, thank you very much for joining us. Ronny is HTEC Chief AI Transformation Officer. And let me just go straight into the topic, Ronny. Everyone is talking about the value that AI can deliver to private equity right now, but what do you think that the firms are still finding the most challenging?
Well, I think right now, a lot of the focus is really on trying to find what are the right use cases that we want to put in, really focusing on identifying use case opportunities. But I think what is really hard is to actually see that within the holding period of time, within the investment horizon that we're looking in, to actually get that value, that estimated value into production, to see it appear in the P&L. And that's where it has to matter at the end. And an investment company looks at the multiples that it can achieve on that. So you need to see how the baseline differs with the value creation that you can achieve through AI. So while I think a lot of time is spent on trying to see, what is the right AI initiative, what are the use cases that we can do, the focus needs to be on where can we get that into production and see the effect in production within the time that we have.
So the private equity firms have ideas, they know how to prioritize, but not how to execute. Is that what we're saying?
Correct. And I think it's both the PE's role and the portfolio company's role to know how to allocate the right amount of capital management attention to those opportunities, and then to be able to get them where they matter most. So I think we need to not look at what AI can do, but first look at the economics that the company has. Mainly looking into the core. A lot of focus was before on costs and efficiency of AI. What matters most for an investor as well as for the portfolio company is how can I create my defense strategy? How can I make my moat that I might have stronger? How can I increase my margin? How can I increase my revenue capture? How can I grow the market? And these, I think, are the starting points that you need, rather than looking, where could AI possibly help us on?
Right. So let's shift to value more specifically, because you often talk about value levers instead of use cases. Now, I remember a year ago, use cases was everything that everybody was talking about. If you had a use case, you were safe. That's not really the fact. So why is that distinction so important?
The distinction is so important because the use cases is quite easily to find. It is just, where does it matter for you? On some of the efficiency part, I think there are some table stakes that you have to do in order to achieve a certain amount of productivity. But what matters most is, where do you actually have your economics in your business? So is it production quality? Is it the cost to serve? Is this the margin improvement? Is this the pricing elements on that? So those are the value levers that we know that AI can move. And you should start from there and then seeing, can AI help boost these? And what do you have the ambition that it can boost at which amount of quality and amount of quantity? And that is your ambition that you should have. And then compare this with the execution capability or the friction that exists in order to achieve that.
So tell me, where is it that in your conversation you see companies starting? So it's obviously not as simple as that, but it makes complete sense when I'm hearing it. But in your conversation, you can clearly see that they're not starting at that point. So where are they starting, and why are they failing at that?
I mean, there are some that start at the proof of concept. We're fortunately already past that with a large extent of companies, but the proof of concept is mostly to see, does this work? Does the technology work? And I think that is fundamentally the wrong point, because you don't think about production at that moment. You're trying to prove that the technology works, or you're trying to see, can this possibly work? In the best case, you still don't know how to bring that into production, and you don't know if that investment of time and money are actually worth it. The next step is often the proof of value, which is already better formulated, where you say, this is the ambition that we have, and we actually build something with change management in mind to see that, if we do it this way, yes, it can work on that. That is much, much stronger, but it still oftentimes does not see the light of production. And the reason for it is that production reality, especially in complex and regulated industries, and in the core functions, are harder to change at scale, especially, than one thinks so. The definition of the kind of requirements that an AI project needs at the beginning, at the value stage, are different from those that software typically has. It's more deterministic. The AI is more probabilistic. It learns in production. It learns through change on that. So we see that most of the projects then die at that stage and don't see that they go into production.
So when you talk about production, you're talking about it going into the mainstream business effectively, so being deployed across the organization. Now, there's a point you made earlier that I'd love to just come back to it just for a second before we move on, which is this: you've mentioned the word time several times, and that's because the time cycle to see the ROI is incredibly long when it comes to PE firm, and some of that has to do with the phases that they go through, the offense and the defense phase, for example. What's the role of AI within those particular areas? And as a follow-up question, I'd love to understand, what is an expected timeline in terms of getting some ROI?
Good points. I think the offense and defense is probably the least understood right now in the AI horizon, especially with Gen AI coming in. I think the defense strategy is one of the most important one operationally to get it right. This protects your current moat, this protects your standing, this protects your margin, and is a requirement step. It's what I often call the operational excellence that you need to achieve on this. But you can't stop with that. In almost all industries, we see that there's a threat of value chain compression, commoditization of legacy models. They're the newcomers, which are not necessarily your old competitors, but ones that inject themselves into the value chain, typically more higher up, and push you down. So that requires an offensive strategy. You need to think about how do you position yourself in, let's say, in an agentic world into this new changed value chain mode. And those are different horizons.
Right.
So the defensive strategy is the horizon that you need to achieve within 1-2 years.
Right.
Whereas the offensive strategy is something that you probably need to experiment more. You need to start right away, but you need to try to see and hunt for those signals that could be relevant with regards to your value destruction on this. Your question about what is the typical horizon, I think it's a really, really important question that needs to be both coordinated by the PE and the portfolio company, because they might not see always eye to eye on that. There are certain levers that we know that can be achieved within 1 year or even 6 months, although typically a P&L cycle will take that 1 year. You have to have a baseline on that, and then you show that with AI, you can crack that through. I think sometimes what makes it difficult, you need to ride both waves, so the short, medium term and the medium, long term strategy, the medium, long-term strategy might be to get a better data foundation there, which we know takes 2 to 3 years.
Absolutely.
And by itself does not provide value.
No.
And this is, I think, where one has to see, okay, if we want to achieve the actual value within 1 year, we need to have some of the other levers that can sometimes be deployed pragmatically, does not achieve necessarily the precision that you need for the complete foundation, but that can gain quick wins within 1 year.